Hi there, my name is Andy Frost, and I'm so thrilled that today you're looking at this idea of how do we become more intergenerational as the local church. I spent 10 months living in France, and during that time I had to learn the French culture. One of the weirdest things for me was the whole French kiss greeting thing. Taking my kids to school on a Monday morning, I would meet various mums and have to give them the kiss, the mwah, mwah, on both cheeks, and it felt so weird initially. But gradually I got into this whole idea, I guess, of kissing random people, and it became kind of quite natural. I came back to the UK. I was in a park one day with my kids, met a random lady. I went in for a kiss. She was like, "What are you doing?" I am so sorry. I thought I was living in France. Culture is powerful. And in France, they have this culture of kissing as they greet. What's interesting is that each and every church has a culture, a way of doing things. For some churches, when they gather on a Sunday, that is what it means to be church. That hour, that 90 minutes together, that is what it means to be church. For others, it's when they gather on a Sunday. The culture is that what begins there continues during the week. It's like a springboard into relationships, and a springboard into discipleship, and a springboard into mission. Each church has a different culture, a different way of doing things. I think you can tell what's important to a church in three ways. First of all, by how they spend their money. The income that comes in, where does that money get spent? Second of all, by the prayers that they pray. What are they interceding and praying for? What is important to them as they pray? And thirdly, you can tell what's important to a local church by the culture of the church as they gather on a Sunday morning. I've been to some churches whereby they're really into hospitality. They're really into the welcome. You get offered 5 cups of coffee before you even enter into the door of the church. Everyone's there with a big smile, welcome you, try and make new friendships. And you can sense the importance of hospitality to that local church. Another church near me, when I've been there, they have a 45-minute prayer gathering before the service begins. The worship band are already in full flow before the service officially commences. And you can sense in that culture the expectancy that you're going to engage with the living God. The question is, how do we show in our culture, in the way we do things, the importance of bringing different generations together? And there are perhaps 5 different levels for how churches do this. For some, children and young people are kept completely separate. They're almost hidden away from the church. They have their own program, their own clubs, but they never get to mingle with the wider church community. Then there are some of those that they have the children present, but they're not to do anything or be involved. They're there to be seen and not to be heard, as some people might have said in the Victorian age. The idea of being visibly there, but not really engaged at all. The third is that sometimes as local churches we have young people and children in our groups, but we just try and entertain them. On a Sunday morning we might sing a song or do something to try and entertain them, but we're not really engaging in them in their own discipleship. We're just entertaining them for a few minutes. Then, fourthly, there's something about participation. And it's beautiful when you begin to see children and young people participating in the life of the church. Perhaps they come to the front to pray for adults. Perhaps they're commissioned into primary school and secondary school. Perhaps they're asked questions. Perhaps they're asked to input their own reflections and thoughts, to even share what God is doing in their lives that week. That sense of participation where it becomes natural to be involved in the life of the church, mixing with different people, perhaps even serving practically, serving teas and coffees, or actually doing a reading in church. But perhaps fifthly, on a whole nother level, is how can we invite our children and young people to be actively involved in shaping how we do church, to take on board their ideas, their thoughts, their reflections. They begin to shape the very way in which we meet together. Those 5 levels: being hidden, being visible but not being engaged at all, being entertained, being participants, or actually being shapers of what happens as we gather as the local church. For For me, there's a challenge in Mark chapter 9, as Jesus is speaking to a big crowd of people gathering around him, and he holds in his arms a small child and says, "Whoever welcomes a small child like this welcomes me." There's a challenge for me in that little verse in Mark chapter 9. But how do we do intergenerational church? How, when we gather, is our culture becoming a springboard into the week ahead? And how are we not having our kids being just hidden away, or being visible but not being heard, or being just entertained? But how do we get our children and young people to participate? And even more so, how do we help them to help shape how we do church going forwards? They are a beautiful gift to the wider body. How we work intergenerationally is such an important question to wrestle through. Let's create cultures in which the different generations thrive together